It's really depressing to read about how some schools in Stoke and other parts of the north are doing worse than schools in London in particular, because the children at those schools are no different, no less capable of understanding the world than children in London. But I think the discussion here is too technical. It's about how do we recruit more teachers, or how do we inspire more teachers to move to different parts of England. I think there's a bigger, more profound problem. I think the children at these schools have been let down by the low expectations of their schools and the low expectations of the education system more broadly. Poverty is too often...
I think you need to go into some of these schools, Brendan, because honestly, I just think...
Hold on, you've interrupted literally everyone who's spoken at some point tonight. Just wait a second. What I'm saying is, what we're seeing over the past 30 years under both Conservative and Labour governments has been the hollowing out of serious parts of education, a reimagination of what children, particularly working class children, are capable of. Education has been dumbed down. We've seen the removal of exams, the replacement of them with coursework. We've seen Shakespeare being taken out of some schools. My parents went to a school in a ditch in the west of Ireland. Literally, it was in a ditch in the west of Ireland in the 1950s and 60s. They did Latin. They read 3 Shakespeare texts a year. My dad did Greek. I mean, it's bizarre. This was in a bog in the middle of nowhere. There was high expectations. They were disciplined. They were taken seriously. They were seen as little individuals capable of understanding the greatest literature, the greatest knowledge. We don't have that in schools in Britain. Thanks to Labour and the Conservatives, we no longer have faith in state school children in particular, particularly the poorer ones, to understand the world around them. We are letting down working class pupils, and we need to improve education across the board.
I invite you to come back to this school, come to any school in my constituency and see the fantastic work that teachers do with some of the most deprived kids in the country.
I didn't call
yes,
into
you
question,
did. Yes, you did.
Yes, you did.
Anyway,
I'm
going to now answer the question.
I didn't call into question teachers. I called into question people like you who run the education system and government.
I don't run the education system.
Your party, when they were in power, who undermined the content of education. I wasn't calling into question anything.
You don't know what you're talking about, frankly. But anyway, back to your question, Jamika.
You should go into education because you've got that nice patronising touch.
Well, I mean, honestly, absolutely.
Obviously, there is great disparity in terms of state school input into politics and law and journalism, where I work. But I am worried, I have to say, about the bashing of private schools, which seems to have become a favoured pastime among politicians in particular. It's an easy way to get applause. You know, you just say Toff and Eton or Bullingdon boys and everyone will clap. It's more complicated than that. And I think this kind of getting your rocks off against the Eton crowd and all those people is really a displacement activity from asking why it is that this disparity has come back to life. And I think what's happened is that great moment of hope in the 50s and 60s in particular, when it was suddenly thought that actually working class kids could go to university, could go into politics, could run the law system, could do all those things. That has disappeared. That has been done down by numerous things, by industrial decline, by the putting out of huge working class communities to pasture on welfare, by the transformation in the education system, the lowering of people's horizons, the argument you often hear from left-wingers about, you know, the poor and the working classes shouldn't want to own too much stuff, you know, they shouldn't be too chavvy, they shouldn't get ideas above their station, they shouldn't be like loads of money.
Who do you hear that? Sorry to interrupt you. Who do you hear that from?
You hear this argument all the time from the opinion-forming set. They see it as very vulgar for working class people to want more stuff, want more comfort, want bigger homes, want bigger cars. But it's a conflation of industrial decline, new ideas, and a loss of faith in the ability of working class communities to do these things.
One more thing, you talked about the 50s and high aspiration then, but today, many, many more children from working class backgrounds, for instance, go to university since the 80s and 90s. So that doesn't hang comfortably, does it, with you saying that we're going backwards rather than forwards?
But university education has changed, and one of the reasons many more working class kids go to university now is because of the industrial decline and the lack of jobs that they would have done previously. There has been a 30 or 40 year attack, I would say, on the confidence and on the horizons of working class communities. And that has had the impact of allowing the old poshos who used to run things to come back and run things. Right. It's much more complicated than saying this Bullingdon conspiracy is taking over Britain. There's a deep and profound, long-standing problem that we really need to address.
Lucy Powell.